And so my topic here, it's all connected together, so I don't want to repeat on things, but my topic is on vulnerability management as part of the ISO 21434. And to introduce a little bit about this topic, I just want to mention again that as we know, vehicles are fastly becoming really sophisticated computers on wheels and are really great targets for attackers. They have many interfaces such as Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, GPS, the OBD itself, some physical interfaces, the USB, and also each of that vehicle has about 70 different ECUs, if not more, and each ECU has its own operating system. Many of them are Unix-based and with a lot of open source software. So it's only increased the chance to remotely attack a vehicle or even entire fleet. So it's really a big amount of data that each OEM and each supplier has to deal with. And not only that, I want to connect to what Connie asked before about the updates, the challenge of the updates of software. It's connected to the phase in the regulation of the decision of the mitigation recommendation, because which update do you decide to do? It's really a big topic because first, you have all the vulnerable software. So, okay, you know which software are vulnerable. And from our experience, we can see that many ECUs has about 1,000 vulnerabilities each time. And every day it's only increasing. So you can track exact which ECUs has how many amount of vulnerabilities, and then you can choose only the 100 critical of them, which is also a really big process. And then, okay, you saw the critical ones, but how do you decide what to do with it? It can be in several ways. Once you can decide to ignore it because it's located on part in the ECUs where the vulnerability requires some privileges and you can't to connect to this part in the ECU, you have to use I privileges. So that's one way you can ignore it. Then maybe you put some security concepts. So even though, for example, I want to give an example. If you remember from the Tesla, the T-bone, the vulnerability they found last year, that vulnerability in a software that is called Conman, which they could remotely attack Tesla infotainment with a drone. So it has some impact about Tesla. So it doesn't mean that that's impact, even if you are vulnerable to that kind of software, it doesn't mean that it will impact the same way that it impacted Tesla, because their infotainment had some functionalities, but other OEM infotainments, even though they are vulnerable, doesn't have to have this kind of impact. And then, for example, Tesla decided to change the software. They changed from Conman to other DNS software, and then you have to start to monitor that software risk. It means that we have to take always in mind, and this is, I think, the main point of mitigation, that there is no chance that you won't have risk. There is no chance that you can close all the odds. There is no chance that there is not going to be vulnerabilities. Linux has if you use Linux, you're gonna have hundreds of vulnerabilities each day. It's just that you have to decide which risk you can take on consideration, which risk you can deal with. You can mitigate the impact on the vehicle. So this one way, and also there are also other values to it, not only the risk, but sometimes we give to our customer knowledge about if the software is end of support and end of life. This is also something crucial, because as our experience, we see that they are not regularly, the software are not regularly being updated, and it's fine, it's embedded systems, but some of the software, even though they might have not some, so even though they might have a small amount of vulnerabilities, you can find on the internet that are not supported, or I don't know, the GitHub comment are not regularly being updated. So it's not some software that you want to use, even though it's with not a lot of risk, because when we talk about vehicles and 7 years on the road and even much more, you want to use software that you can work with, and you will have the support and the mitigation plan with it. So that's also something to take in consideration. And I think that the question that I can raise here, because this one of the challenges that we are now facing is it a general risk model that fit for all based on the regulation for each OEMs and supplier, or each one of them has its own risk methodology? Because we have one regulation, but still we can see that each one of them act differently in that way.
Let's say it's experience will tell me that they will do all different. When we started OBD in trucks, in heavy trucks in 2005, now it's 2006, 7, somewhere around that, it was EPA 10 legislation coming in. We found, and I worked in a tier 1 at that time, we found something really interesting. Onboard diagnostic is a thing you need by legislation, but nobody will pay for. A feature a truck needs to have, yeah. And so we thought as a tier 1 that OEMs will come together, truck OEMs, and they will match things, yeah, and say, let's develop that together, share costs and things. And exactly that did not happen. Everybody did its own concept, did its own naming, did its own variables, and things like that. And there was a message on the canvas, it's called DM1. So when you find something, the DM1 is a broadcast that we have an issue. And then the legislator came with DM1, and then this guy came with DM1 dash, DM1 star, DM1 dot. Yeah, and they added every variables to that DM1 message, specific to that OEM, that OEM, that OEM. And I fear that we have now exactly the same thing. So on the one side, of course, by, car systems have an evolution. Yeah, so you don't go in the green field and you create the systems. There are certain protocols you take over, you continue, and you have backwards compatibilities. And you will see that different ways. I'm quite sure for that. So as a tier 1, you need to cater 3, 4, 5 at least systems and models. If I may add one thing to the risk model, I did my first lecture about cybersecurity, then based on OBD in 2013. And that time we thought, okay, there will be firewalls, they will protect us, nobody will plug a canvas into the internet, things like that, nobody is crazy like that. In the meantime, we know better. So yes, there are canvases hooked up to the internet. And so I think what we need to come is to a philosophy now when we develop functions, either in the interior or the powertrain area, that we, how should I say, it's a bit negative, but it's not meant negative, that we do not trust so much as we did in the past. So yeah, there's a CAN message and says, do this diagnostic, do this OBD function, but that we get more intelligence in these open functions, that we can say, is it the right moment? Are we in standstill? Make it sense to do it now? Yeah, so that we ask we ask the request, is it really sensible what we're doing here? And of course, in ECUs, which now will come, we will have authentication, yeah, that you have a kind of passport, hey, I'm allowed to flash you, things like that, which we still don't have in all of them. So I think for me, we need to have little walls distributed everywhere. Not the one big one. Yeah, we can have the big one in the beginning of the system, but behind that wall, when that falls, and that could happen, as you said, Just remind me, one of my first cybersecurity reviews I had, the reviewer told me, this was some years ago, you know what, I make a picture. What you gave me is like you try to type-proof a car with the brakes from 1965. So we were not outdated, we were far outdated, yeah, with vulnerabilities. And so by that, you need to get this, as you said, you always will have weaknesses. So you need to start put little defense islands around, and by that, make it just harsh, because I think at the end, hacking is a business case. So if you have a function that you can quickly go in there, which you can quickly misuse, things like that with an iPhone or whatever, yeah. But if you need to have special knowledge and okay, it does not work quickly, yeah, then maybe we get 90% of the people out of that, and then they're not searching too much for the vulnerabilities. Of course, you still have the guys who have the tools, have the money, have the time, have a task to do that. Yeah, but I think hacking by accident is also a thing we should avoid.